Hello? Is it on there? Oh.
Hello. Hi, I'm Marina Hatsopoulos. Welcome. I'm so happy you're all here. This is really exciting to finally be back in person after all this time. So first of all, I want to thank 𝗡𝗶𝗸𝗶𝗸𝗶 and 𝗓𝗏, where's 𝗓𝗏? From 𝗏𝗏𝗶𝗶 for hosting us here at Venture Cafe. That was really generous of you, and we are really grateful. Also, thank you to 𝗙𝗏𝗏𝗶𝗍, the Consul General of Greece in Boston, who's going to be speaking momentarily, and for the wine and for your support. And thank you to 𝗙𝗏𝗗𝗶𝗶𝗍, who's right there, who is doing the videotaping and supported us with the food and the bartender for tonight. So please, before everyone starts, if you haven't gotten a glass, please go up and get a glass. Thank you also for the support of MIT Enterprise Forum Greece, which relies on volunteers to serve as mentors and judges for their startup competition, which is one of the leading startup competitions in Greece. And they just started their newest cycle. So if you go to MIT EECS.org, you can sign up to become a mentor or a judge. So I hope you'll do that. The Hellenic Innovation Network is an outgrowth of MIT Enterprise Forum Greece with a mission of accelerating technological innovation and entrepreneurship in Greece to fuel the economy and create jobs. HIN is a US-based nonprofit organization created with the support of the Consul General of Greece in Boston to facilitate access to resources, partners, and best practices by building bridges between the diaspora and global tech hubs and the Greek tech community. Driven by an advisory board of global innovators, HIN disseminates startup news, broadcasts educational webcasts, organizes monthly CEO group meetings, which George organizes, and hosts in-person pitching and networking events like tonight. Last year, because of COVID, we had to go online, and we hosted 15 virtual events and had over 33,000 views. And those are recorded. If you go to our website, hellenic.org, you can watch any of them. We had some amazing speakers. You can also register at hellenic.org and get connected to the rest of our membership. So anyway, we are thrilled to be back in person, and thank you for your support. And I have to mention that under the incredible leadership of our Consul General 𝗙𝗏𝗏𝗶𝗶𝗍, we now have a direct flight from Boston to Athens. And so hopefully this will fuel more sort of cross-border interactions. So with that, 𝗙𝗏𝗏𝗶𝗶𝗍, you're next.
Well, I'm covered. So thank you very much, Marina. And I think that she deserves a louder applause. And I've been working with this group, and I feel that there is a dynamic, and it's so good to be with you here again in person at Cambridge Innovation Center. This is an event also under the auspices of Greece 2020. So I think it's a great opportunity to celebrate the bicentennial from the Greek Revolution, promoting the technology revolution. So this is a very important event. Data analytics, it's probably the hottest subject in the industry. And I would like to thank personally each one of you, Lucille, for moderating, Nikos, Evanthea, George, and Stavros also for hosting us. This is, data and data analytics actually helped us to make the case for probably the most important thing we have managed to achieve, which was the flight. It was 3 years ago, and it was within the Hellenic Innovation Network that we started the discussion, can we do it? Is it possible? And we decided that it could be possible because we had the data. It was thanks to George Zakaria, who produced the data and the clicks and all the internet searches. And we saw that from Boston to Athens, we had more passengers, or as many as passengers as from Boston to Rome. So we started making our case. Initially, nobody believed us, but we had the data, and the data were always there. And we are really happy that, despite all odds, despite the 737 MAX crisis, the pandemic, other problems in the industry, this crisis created also an opportunity for point-to-point routes, and especially from the Boston-Athens route, that we believe that it will help open greater ways of communication and synergies between Athens and Boston, which is the Athens of America. So enjoy, and we are really happy that we have managed to help all this activity.
And or actually, Marina, are you introducing, or shall I introduce? I introduce. I'll let them introduce themselves each, but I have the pleasure to speak with each of them, Stavros, George, MT, and Nikos. They are outstanding, and we only have an hour. Each of them could go for an hour each. So it spans everything from blockchain, data frame, failure detections, and demand forecasting for large corporations. So very, very broad, very good panel. But before, I think something that would help us, because when I spoke with each of them, I think one of the questions was, so who is my audience? And I said, well, we'll see on the day, right? So again, just a quick round of hands. So who is Greek? Who is Greek here? Right? So who is not Greek? All right. Okay, good. But it helps. And then, so who is related or working for a startup right now? Yeah, Mary, you should raise your hand. Okay. One, two, okay, good. And then who's a student or someone, okay. But then you can raise it earlier, but it helps, at least for the questions or how you're answering them, it helps to know who is, great students or startup related. I think this will help a little bit with the conversation. So you each have very interesting career in data analytics, and but also very unique path. I mean, we talked about Nikos. He's actually the CEO of Metrika, which is a blockchain. It'll explain more, but it's all about using blockchain for to bring insights to companies. We have MT, who is trying to bring data science, or I would say AI and machine learning in demand forecasting for Amazon. And I mean, if you think about the problem, how can you forecast demand on Amazon? Well, that's a huge problem. George, failure detections on pipes, and CEO of 𝗙𝗲𝗄𝗏. He will explain what it is. And then Stavros, who is hosting us also, working on blockchain. Untitled Chapter. I'm reading my notes, I shouldn't, but it's really a unique company in that it uses data frame to analyze any kind of data, and you will be able to tell us more about that. So I'll start with my first question. So unique path, as you say, data science and data analytics can take many different. So can you tell us more about how you got to the data analytics field, and what you're proposing today in your company? Because I only gave a word to describe each company. So how would you want to go? Who do you want to go first? Yes. Perfect.
So I hope you can hear me. So on my end, data analytics came, I think, through a mathematics background, engineering background. I did undergrad in electrical engineering. I did the same at MIT. I did my master's. I was always kind of more on the data side of things. And through my career, I started in the telecom sector. I spent a number of years there. I very quickly realized that someone who is kind of more math inclined, the way you can bring impact to an organization is that you figure out what data is there and you find things in the data. So it felt like, the secret weapon of a young engineer at the time, that I could plow through the data, combine different data sets, understand what that meant, and make a difference. So very, very early on in my career, working for Vodafone, I kind of invented a system that could predict what DSL speed you would get at any given random address. And that was kind of the first exposure that I realized, oh, I could have an impact within the company I'm working with data. And then founding Metrika, I realized that blockchain networks, the way they work today, there isn't any good way of figuring out what the hell the network is. And I thought, oh, this is a very exciting problem. How do I solve it? And I did what I always knew, go back, find the data, and find the source.
But why blockchain? And how did you came to that?
So blockchain came kind of, I would say, through discussions with investors and with people in the community. So I was trying to figure out whether I could predict the health of telecom networks, and I had seen similar things for tier one service providers, companies like AT&T, Comcast, Verizon, CenturyLink, and I knew there was data signatures in big data lakes that are being created and that you could make sense. And then as I was discussing, I said, oh, I want to do that in the telecom sector. And I met with a person who now is our chairman and became my first investor as well. And he said, why do you want to solve a problem that's of the past? Why don't you solve something exciting in the future? And I kept probing him. And I said, what does a problem like that look like? And it was mid-2018. And he said, have you looked at the blockchain space? And I said, oh, that sounds interesting. Let me look into it. And I started looking into it, and then I found the problem that we're solving today. So it came through, I would say, randomly, but I was on the path of using data.
And so who are your clients today? So who are you targeting? Who would you like to be your customers?
So basically anyone who runs any kind of operations on blockchain, whether it's the protocol team building a blockchain network, whether it's node hosting companies running nodes, single node runners, or applications that run on top, crypto exchanges, trading applications, gaming. Some of our customers are 𝗙𝗶𝗵𝗶 that does NBA Top Shot, what made NFTs popular. Our customers include Solana, which is a very well-known blockchain network, and banks that are running blockchain networks are among our customers. The Inter-American Development Bank, for example. So there are, I think, anyone who touches blockchain in an operational way becomes the customer.
No, this is fascinating. Let's move on to Anthony, so we have a chance to hear everyone here. So can you do you want me to repeat the question, or you're good?
I think I got it. Yeah, I think that. Although I'm not a CEO, I can feel a little bit, weird with mixed apologies. But anyway, so my name is 𝗙𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗶. I'm a data scientist at Amazon right now. So I'm in the corporate finance organization. My team is called Global Financial Technologies, and basically what we're doing is what 𝗙𝗲𝗄 mentioned. We're doing a lot of demand planning, a lot of sales forecasting. We basically have this financial deck, and we're trying to forecast each of the 8 KPIs that we have there. And one more thing is that we're trying to automate.
KPIs are key performance indicators.
Yeah, that's basically fine. Thanks. And we're also trying to automate the financial forecasting process. So we're trying to move, finance is a pretty traditional industry, and we're trying to move away from Excel sheets, from spreadsheets, from Excel-based models into more automated machine learning models. And so these are the 2 things that we're doing.
Excellent. And how did you end up there? Because you didn't start with Amazon, right?
Yeah, so I also studied applied math and physics, and basically after that I came to US. I did my master's in financial statistics, and then I got an internship here in Boston with Liberty Mutual Insurance, and so that's how it started, with the advanced analytics area. And we did my first year here. I did a lot of basic statistical modeling and a lot of analytics space, and then the last 4 years at Liberty, I was in a research team that we're basically dealing with more advanced, just say, modeling techniques. We work for the product team, and we're trying to build, basically, we work as a consultant for the.
Which is very interesting. So you can think about your insurance company, and so they have, so they here like a big one like Liberty Mutual. So they actually have a research group that is trying to use AI machine learning techniques to better forecast how often you will die.
We're covered in casualty, but yeah, we could do that. Yeah.
No, that's fascinating as well. All right, let's move on to George.
Everybody. I am George Demosthenis, CEO at 𝗏𝗏_𝗏. Even though my accent sounds like I'm from South Boston, I'm originally from Cyprus. That's where I was born. I came in the US when I was a teenager, and for the last 12 years, I have been working in the water infrastructure market. Every 2 minutes, there is a water main break in the United States. And to put that into perspective, every day, there is so much water that is being lost that we could fill up 9,000 swimming pools. So it's a big problem. And while I was at a public company working as a software product manager, I spoke with a lot of engineers that create plans for water utilities to avoid those breaks. And these are very bright people. But planning is hard. And so one afternoon, I was having coffee in Cambridge with a former professor of mine, and I told him about the problem. And he said, George, I know that water is a scarce resource, it's increasingly becoming more expensive, and I want to help. I said, how can you help? You don't know much about water. He said, well, I founded a company in the medical industry that was using predictive analytics to identify patients with a high likelihood of a health event like diabetes or heart attack. Let's do the same thing for pipes. That's how we got started. So we reached out to 16 water utilities to ask if they would be willing to help us develop our first product. And 15 signed up. So we knew that this was a big problem. And we began experimentation. Of course, we used some out-of-the-box tools. And after trying many different things, we saw some promising, some signal in the data. And then another great fellow, 𝗏𝗶𝗵𝗶𝗶, who's here with us, joined us, and he said, okay, you guys did well, now let's start from scratch and rewrite everything, because we need to create a model, a machine learning model that focuses on that specific problem, focuses on identifying pipes with the highest likelihood of failure. And that's what we did. So how would we put it?
No, but and today you have people both on both sides of the Atlantic, if I may say, which is amazing.
Yeah, so we are still a small team, but more than half of us now are based out of Greece, which is really amazing. We have been able to find a lot of talented.
Well, we should say you started here, right?
We started here in Boston. The core team has been in Boston now since 2017, and we started an experiment just a year and a half ago. We said, let's try and hire people from Greece, and it has been very successful. So we have a technical team in Greece that we're growing, and just started hiring marketing folks as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let's move on to 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, please. How did you get where you are at? CEO of.
Hi, thank you, Lucille. My name is 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. I'm the founder and CEO of 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. So I'm going to share a little bit about my background and how I came to be the founder and CEO of 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, and also what 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 does at a very high level. So I'm a computer scientist, as technical as it gets. I had zero knowledge about business whatsoever. I did my PhD in data management, so I've always been working on data. I did my PhD in Hong Kong. I spent 8 years there. And then in 2014, I got a great job at Intel Labs and MIT. So I moved from Hong Kong to Boston. I've been here ever since. I started working at the intersection of high performance computing because of Intel and databases because of MIT. I worked with some extremely bright people at MIT on databases who had created a lot of companies as well, and a lot of database systems that a lot of people are using. And then that's how the journey started. The main observation or the main desire at the time that I wanted to do was to build some more advanced analytics into the database. You know, the data, I don't want to make any assumptions about the background here of the audience, but data, when somebody says a database, most people are thinking about tables and SQL. This is what it is. And to me, that was not it. Like, that was such a limited use case for databases. I wanted to do machine learning in the database. I wanted to capture some very important scientific problems like genomics, like LiDAR, digital twins, weather. So use cases that are not captured by databases today. You don't use databases for this kind of stuff. So that's how it started. And I figured out that the way we structure data in databases up until I created 𝗙𝗶𝗶 was limited. Most databases are storing data as tables. This is a very limiting data structure. So I had to come up with something else. And that was the multi-dimensional array. 𝗙𝗶𝗶 is based on multi-dimensional arrays. That's the only technical thing that I'm going to share with you guys, I promise. And the outcome of this, Lucille, was that this allowed us to store more than tables, more than tabular data. We're storing genomes, right, DNA sequences, storing LiDAR, we're storing weather, imaging. So we created a database that is universal.
I was blown away when we were chatting, and you were able basically to, I mean, you can go on the website and look, but looking at different data types and mine videos, like when you do weather forecast, it's all about, you have videos, but at the same time, you also have like the regular data tables, you have pictures, like the data comes in so many different types, and you've got all of them into data frames. Right, that are multidimensional arrays that are multidimensional, and so that you can capture time and also different types of things. This is fascinating. The applications are, you mentioned whether, I mean, for now.
I'm just mentioning the ones that we're working on because we have inbounds that are piling up with use cases that, you know, are mind-blowing to us. We never even thought about them. But the most important ones right now are on the healthcare sector, mainly genomics, single cell, stuff like that. And then a lot on the geospatial sector. So point clouds, LiDAR. Your iPhone has LiDAR now. It can scan surfaces and create a lot of dots. Those dots are in the order of trillions, and we're storing them. And we can manage these trillions very well. And a lot of time series, a lot of financial data, and you know, the verticals are keep on exploding.
Fascinating. But let's move on to the second question. And here, what I would like to start with is that data analytics is booming. We all know that. And so there's a lot of opportunities, but it's also extremely competitive. You probably know that better than anyone else, that the technologies that you're developing might become obsolete tomorrow with someone else coming up with a better algorithm or better solution than yours. So it's probably difficult to stay relevant. And my question to you is, what are your strategies to differentiate yourself and stay relevant despite the competitiveness?
So that's a very important question. Thank you for that. Technology is very important, and we continue to do R&D on our core product while we develop new products to stay ahead of our competition. In fact, every competition we did, every pilot we did, where we did head-to-head, we won every time, whether it was another startup or a public company. And just a quick side note on how we do these competitions. We tell the water utility, give us your historical failure data, but don't tell us what happened last year. We're going to predict last year as if it didn't happen yet. And do the same thing with the other company. And let's see who does best. We did that several times and won every time. So technology is important, but it's not just the technology, right? We look at ease of use and automation. Automate so that customers don't have to do things manually, so that they don't have to use spreadsheets anymore. And customer satisfaction. One of our values is obsessing over customer satisfaction, and we are borderline there because we think that customer happiness Amazon
Yeah,
doesn't do
that's
that.
what I'm
Is very important. So we are very fortunate to have 100% retention and 0% churn. And that's because of the care we give to our customers. Our customers are government, so we don't have thousands of them, but we think that's part of our differentiation.
Thank you so much.
saying.
Yeah, well, Yeah, well, that's remain secrets.
Sure. I think it's really important, what you mentioned, George. Like, I think you need to realize that you need to keep moving on and keep innovating, right, in the industry. In our case, we work very close with the guys who are building the blockchain network. So we are experts in what we're doing beyond what we are kind of building today. So we have worked with many different like blockchain cases. We have same network issues. We have an expertise that goes above and beyond our current product set. And that means that we think about the future. And when we go to customers, I think the first realization is that we propose to them 10 or 20 different things that they have never thought about. And that comes from the experience of working across the entire blockchain industry. So I think it's really important to have deep expertise in your sector so that you can keep identifying not only the problems that exist today, but extrapolate what are the problems that your customers don't know, but are going to face in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years, and build towards in that direction. So I think that's really important. And business-wise, I think that informs your go-to-market strategy. Who are the smartest customers that you need to be working with, who are ahead of the curve, who can help your thinking about what's the problem that the mass doesn't realize and that everybody will need in a year. So I think it's that combination.
And how do you actually maintain that excellence with your research team? And how do you make sure that you're on top of everything blockchain, for example?
I think part of it is that we hire people who are curious on our side. So we hire people who want to find problems, who work.
So it's all about the people, right? You need to have the right people.
It comes down with the people, and I mean, obviously the clients, working with the right ones, but it has to be your internal capability to lead the client into the problems, to listen and have the listening skills to realize what the problem is and ask the questions that nobody else is asking. So I think it comes down to hiring kind of inherently curious people who love the space, understand it, and can be thought leaders.
Excellent. Thank you. A few last words, Stavros, on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So fortunately for us, this is part of the value proposition of 𝗙𝗵𝗶, how to stay relevant in the future. We call this future proofness, and it's a core capability of 𝗙𝗵𝗶. So the way we did that, actually, let me tell you the problem if you don't do it. And I'm not talking about just being, taken over by competition. I mean, from a technological standpoint, if you try to overfit one solution for a very specific thing, which is exactly what we're addressing, purpose-built systems. The entire market is working on purpose-built systems. Well, Amazon is telling everybody build a database for every single thing. We say the exact opposite. Okay, the exact opposite, with a lot of risk, because if it's also an economical thing, part of economics. If you want to create a startup, I don't know how many of you guys have created your own startups. You focus on a very small niche. Like that's how you start. You start with something very, very specific. But this is also risky because if you overfit it to a particular domain, a particular use case, then when this use case expands, you become irrelevant. So I took the exact opposite direction. I said I'm going to create something which is extremely generic, extremely foundational, which adapts very easily to every single domain. But if something new comes up, a new type of storage backend, SSDs versus an object store on the cloud, that made a lot of startups irrelevant because they were over-optimizing for SSDs, for example. Well, we optimize for everything. We made everything modular, the storage backend, the compute, the interfaces, everything is modular and therefore extensible.
Excellent. So not all your eggs in the same basket, and try to diversify your offer. So now, question. I think there are a few here, but there are a few students here. but the question, I think, or your answers to the question can help pretty much everyone here. It's what advice would you give young students or entrepreneurs entering the field of data analytics? Where should they focus on? Because I mean, data analytics is a huge field and there's a lot of excitement about it. What would you tell them or tell the next entrepreneur in data science?
So let me give it a try here. I think to me what is interesting is the problem that you're solving. I think you need to be passionate about the problem that is out there. So I think data analytics is, a skill, is the means of solving something. But where it starts, I think it's that flame that you get passionate about it, you read about it, you ask people, you talk to people about it, and you say, it cannot be done that this is happening that way. It cannot be done that nobody knows how well a blockchain network works. It cannot be done that water pipes break and we cannot predict them. These are types of problems that you keep thinking. I think someone at one point described it, it's similar to like falling in love with a problem. You get obsessed and you keep thinking again and again. And at that time, I think you go back and you say, I have to do something now. And you put something together, you try to solve it. And at that point, I think data analytics skills come handy and you can solve it. The other way around, I think, is tricky. When you try to apply something we know and search for a domain, you might end up with a small problem. I like the other approach, which is big problem, passion, and then find what it takes to kind of solve it. And I'm sure data analytics will be part of it.
I know, it is really, this was my takeaway, I think, when we spoke passion. If you are not interested in the end or finding something, learning all the data analytics,
it's such a long and difficult journey, building something that analytics is just one part of it, and it's the tool. So you have to make sure that whenever you are disappointed, that you go through the lows, that passion keeps you going. You realize that you're on the right direction, and you keep doing it.
Excellent. Angie, would you like to have one?
Yes, so I'm going to talk more about my journey. And like, for example, if you're looking for a job in data science, I need some sort of advice. So for me, it was, there are definitely the technical skills that you need to have, or you can have, basically. So I read somewhere, and like people at Amazon, they always joke, they say the data science job description is like a wish list or a wild card, just because there's so many things, right? There's like stats, machine learning, data prep, visualization. Of course, you're not going to know every single thing. And I think the most important thing is like match, your technical skills, basically combine this with your soft skills and communicating and collaborating with other people in order to gain all the knowledge or basically work on your development opportunities. So I would say that, in general, there's like this data science unicorn. It doesn't exist. You cannot know everything for sure. Like Nikos said, there's a wide range, there's a wide range of things that you can know. And the more you study, actually, the more you realize that you don't know everything. So I would say for everyone who's looking to switch to a data analytics role, to just play on your strengths and basically pick a role that is either, if you're good in programming or in tech, pick a little bit more tech role. If you're good in business, just work on your strengths basically and develop your opportunities and your development opportunities with your team. So yeah, that's my advice.
Sure.
Great advice from both of you, especially as it relates to finding new companies, and passion. It is so important, so important. So one thing that will certainly help everyone is being open to and focusing on experimentation, trying different things. In most things in life, it will be helpful. And so my advice is try different things within the data science and see what you like, because you need that passion. If you try something that you think is okay and go for it, you're never going to be as great as you can be. So try as many things as you can within that data science umbrella and select the one that you like the most, is my advice.
Lucille, you mentioned entrepreneurs, right? Entering the space. So I have two pieces of advice. One is on the business side and one is on the technological side. So on the business side, because this is the first company I did, so I had to learn everything from scratch. Do not improvise. This is my advice. Building a company is textbook. There are tons of materials out there, tons of books, a lot of mentors that have done this before. Go find them and just follow and execute. Focus your creativity on the product, the team, the culture, other stuff like that. Creating the business is textbook. Don't overthink it. Just follow the advice of others. On the technological side, enter the analytics space. Start from the bottom. The bottom is the storage. Where is the data? If you are entering the analytics space, when you run examples and tutorials online, you're playing with tiny data because they're designed in order to play with the tutorials. In the real world, the data is in the order of terabytes and petabytes. And the very first thing that we need to figure out is where is the data? Is it on the cloud? Is it on-prem? Are there any governance guarantees? So before you even get to the sexy things, machine learning and all of that, start from data management. So these are my 2 cents.
Oh, excellent. Don't reinvent the wheel if you start your business. Follow the elder and then check the data, right? Make sure you have good quality. So moving on, actually on the actual techniques that are bound to have a large impact in the future. Data analytics is huge, and we heard of AI, machine learning, deep learning. Where do you think the field is going, and which one are going to have the largest impact? And I want to have a side story because I think Nikos was the one, and as you answer, you can bring this back. But we don't do machine learning for the sake of machine learning, or we don't do deep learning for the sake of deep learning, because it could happen even like when you do demand forecasting, that actually the best model is the simplest one, which is a simple regression or panel that will actually yield the best results. And yes, you wanted to create an AI company, but your best model is just a regression. And so what do? No, actually, well, going back, this is just an anecdote because I know that Nikos was passionate about that. But so what do you foresee for the future? And
let me say this. I mean, although we could be throwing the term AI for our company because we do anomaly detection, we do a number of things that pertain to machine learning. There hasn't been any reason for us to do so far. I think if you are solving a problem that is a big one and that people realize the core value, you don't need to leverage the terms there. So the way we think about it is that what are our client needs, listening to them, extrapolating the problems, and then we go back and we say, oh, does that mean combining different data sets? Does that mean correlating? Does that mean doing regression? What is the right data technique to solve the problem? And in some cases, and I'm sure other people will talk to it, you use machine learning and you don't know why the box is doing what it is supposed to be doing. So then it has some limited use. So we are very much kind of client focused on that part.
I think I agree with you so much. Like you said, no, seriously, like, especially at insurance that I was before. We need to have some sort of interpretation of the model, because if we don't deep dive into the model, not going to be able to explain the model to the regulators, we're going to have like a lot of issues. So I think one important thing is like always framing the problem first, and also define the metrics of success, like being able to evaluate the model that you're building. Otherwise, you're going to end up in a way, and in some results that are the best case is inconclusive. The second one is, the wrong results. Sorry, this was the question, right, Lucia? I just wanted to...
No, this, I mean, there's no, I want to be guiding, but, and so what do you foresee as technique for the future? And we can move on to George. Like, what do you foresee as the best technique for?
Yeah, so great points. I think that the future is data science, and it depends on the problem to figure out what subset of data science needs to be used. So as an example, we use machine learning to identify pipes, water pipes, that have the highest likelihood of failure in the future. Well, recently, we started using a similar method for wastewater pipes, which is in a different vertical. And soon, we will be releasing a product that uses similar but different techniques under the data science umbrella to figure out which pipes have lead so that we can take them off of the ground and we have safer communities. So the future is data science, and the problem will define what the solution will be, which is consistent with what the rest of us.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can speak much to the techniques that I foresee specifically for machine learning and AI, but I'll tell you a couple of problems that I'm seeing so I can foresee a stepping stone towards having new techniques in machine learning. So as I mentioned before, we work on many different domains, right? From healthcare to telecoms to satellite imaging to weather and so on and so forth. So those domains have started slowly to adopt machine learning. Machine learning is not in production just yet. It's getting there. Most of the research divisions are working on it, and slowly they're moving it into production. Now, machine learning is very foundational. It has very specific tools. It's mostly math, like linear algebra. So it's very, very foundational. So regardless of the domain and regardless all the jargon, the terminology, like, you know, between bioinformatics, for example, and I don't know, location services, I foresee some normalization. Like the data has to be normalized. And this is what we do. We're saying that this data can be unified in one structure, whether it comes from telecoms or from hospitals, because the machine learning techniques are the same. And they operate with the same primitives. So I foresee this normalization of the data.
One thing I want to add is that, you know, as simple as it sounds, and I'm sure the same is the case with George and Olga, one of the core advantages that one can have is that if you get early into a space, you have data that goes so far back and from so many customers that then you have the luxury of doing whatever you want on top of the data. So, and you understand the metrics so deeply, what they do and what they are, that you're in a much better position to apply the technique that you want. So it's not, I think the algorithmic part is the problem that you need to solve, but I think getting access to great data sets or, you know, having a unique data set is kind of probably, I think, provides a competitive edge on things.
Very good. So second to last question, so and then we can open it to everyone's question. But are there risks in using AI? And here I'm using the word AI specifically. And I want to bounce on something that Anthony said about, oh, if I cannot explain my model, we won't be able to use it for forecasting. So I would like to understand more what are the risks of using AI, deep learning into your business, if there are any.
Yeah, I think that there's this, again, term, I learned all these terms at Amazon, AI FOMO, that's how we call it. It's like fear of missing out, you know, like that you will be left out by all the cool deep learning techniques, basically, by using, you know, the classical linear model, generalized linear model, all things. Anyway, so my point is that sometimes, and I'm also guilty of that in the past, you want to try the different and the new algorithms that they're out there, and you know you're like, oh, I have to try it, I have to put it on my resume or whatever. I just want to see how it is. And at the end of the day, it's not the best model you can use. And if you're not able to explain it, even for insurance, that, you know, there are regulations, but even for finance now at Amazon, like the stakeholders, they want basically details of why the model is like that, why the forecast is like that. And so deep learning is cool, and I'm sure it's like useful for a lot of applications here, but I think it depends again on the application. And one more point of that is that just don't, you know, if you overdo it with the accuracy, you might end up overfitting a model, and you might end up modeling random noise or with no other underlying patterns, and then you will have inconclusive results at the end. So again, I think the whole point is like, once again, going to frame the problem, see what exactly you have, what you need to do from the mathematical point, and then go and look on the algorithms and, you know, pick the simplest one. Otherwise, you will end up with inconclusive results. Yeah.
Excellent. And George, yeah.
Yeah, to add to that, in our business, it's all about risk reduction, right? Not having failures, not having red patterns. So risk reduction. Yet, one of our biggest challenges is educating our customers of what AI is. Some are engineers, but some are managers that don't have a technical background and believe AI is a black box that they don't understand. And if you don't understand something, it's hard to buy it. So it sometimes extends the sales cycle because we have to explain it. That's one of our biggest challenges, and therefore a risk to our business.
Thank you so much. So, yeah, I think we'll move on. So this is our last question, and then I would love to hear what everyone would like to have. If we have time, otherwise I can open it up. We have time for one more question?
Yeah, quick question.
All right, well, what's your superpower?
I can start, I can be very brief. So my superpower is that I learn very quickly and I like to adapt the knowledge in practice. I've done this with business. I've done this throughout my career. So that's it. Like, yeah, I just learn very quickly.
Great. For me, I'd say it's culture. And while culture is a word that so many people use, for us it's very, very important. We wrote our values early on and then expanded to a whole deck where we wrote everything that we are. And this was a collaborative process and the process that continues to evolve, right? The culture always evolves. But we wrote it down and now we share this with every person that wants to join our company because we want everyone to be aligned. If everyone is aligned and has the same vision and mission, we're going in the same direction, it helps us be more powerful than our competition.
Yeah, I don't know, for me, it will be my high energy plus people skills that I have. So I think, this works well in the work culture. I have built a lot of good relationships at work. So I think, this helped me also develop not just myself, my career, and in general, I hope, it will bring even more, with collaboration communication. I feel like I'm learning even more and adding to that to my technical background. I think it's a good combination. So I'd say that it's a superpower.
Well, in my case, I think, two things. The one is I care a lot about the problems of that I'm solving. I'm curious in that sense, and I like to understand where things are going, how a field is being shaped, what's the future. I want to have this kind of, I don't have this predictive power, but I like thinking a lot about it and trying to understand as much. And part of it is listening and listening what other people who are much smarter than me think of the space. And the second part, I think, is being humble enough to realize that no person is smart enough on figuring it out on their own. So the smartness is in bringing other people on the journey who are much more capable than you are and enabling them. And it comes down to you just being a man on a mission. That's what it is.
So I think we can. And so let's open it for questions. I don't have a question.
First of all, fascinating advice and insights. Thank you so much to everyone here. So I see a lot of people sort of getting into this field, and there's so many things that are done right, but also so many things that are done wrong. I'm curious if you could tell us about what are some of your pet peeves? What are some of the things that you sort of watch people doing wrong all the time, and how do you do it differently, and what should one avoid in those pitfalls of data science?
All right. Well, I don't want to reveal all our secrets, but what I can tell you is something that is very important, not for data science only, but generally for entrepreneurs or students that want to do something great. It's the sense of urgency. Sense of urgency is super important for entrepreneurs. You can't wait to respond to a customer in 2 days or 3 days. Generally, if you have that sense of urgency, you will do better as an entrepreneur, certainly as a student, and being part of the company.
Yeah, this is a great question. So I will answer only with respect to the specific verticals, because I cannot say for everybody, but I can see I know you're in bioinformatics, so I can tell you a few things that I'm seeing there that I would like to be different, but it's the same in geospatial, it's the same pattern, by the way. They tend to reinvent the wheel when it comes to storing data, different file formats, for example, although it's exactly the same thing, whether it is LiDAR or PCF data, for example, it's the same thing. They're three-dimensional sparse data. And they do hang up on the custom-made tools, very specific to the domain, and they're missing out on opportunities for data science, for using generic data science tools out there. If you use a specific library done by a very big institute only because this is the only library you know, well, you cannot use the rest of the stuff because they're not compatible. This is the thing we're trying to change.
If I wanna add the same thing, I wanna iterate the same thing, but more like, basically, I feel that if you're just focusing on what's hot right now, like say deep learning, right? And becoming a subject matter expert on that, like this data analytics field is so broad that I think you need to have some sort of like generalized knowledge too, or like being able to pick up or read whatever. So whenever you see a problem, you will get like different approaches, not just one. I think the more you read and the more study what the algorithms are out there, you're gonna pick up different things. So if you focus on just one thing that it's really hot at now, I think you just limit your options and the knowledge in general.
I'm tempted to answer on the company part, but I'll answer more on the data analytics part on what they do wrong. I think whenever I hire someone, the thing that I keep thinking is, does this person collaborate and communicate well enough with others so that they can understand the shifting problems that they're facing? Because whatever technique they have, I have this picture from my years in consulting where I would see an analyst working till midnight, and that was because they were solving the wrong kind of problem. Whereas if the person listens and understands and knows how to kind of communicate and ask you for feedback, and there is this iterative process, then you make sure you're solving the right problem and you do it much more efficiently, and that scales. Whereas everything else you can be, going into rabbit holes.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you faced as you were either scaling your companies or your career? Like, what are some of the biggest challenges that you have overcome to get that, level of it?
Wow, that's
a lot of questions.
that's a good one.
I should have added, do you want to, when you ask a question, do you want to say your name and
Sure.
present yourself?
Yeah, so my name is 𝗓𝗏𝗏. I come from New York. I work for a marketing technology startup there, Action IQ. The founder is Greek, that's what he does. I've been there for 4 years. It's a Series C company.
Well, some of the challenges, I think the first hires in the company are really important. I think bringing the right people on board and building a company with the right culture, it's like going on an expedition, and if the first person is not the right person who shows up, you're saying, oh God, how's this gonna be like? Right? How are we gonna get to the top of that? So I think to me, and the reason why I'm extremely happy is, having so talented people around me. That to me says that whatever the company needs to do, or if something happens tomorrow and the market changes, we have the right team to go for the next kind of hit and climb there. So I think the challenge there is not polluting the culture, not bringing people who that's what can take down a company, I think.
Yeah, I know we started late, so we might have space for at least 2 more questions, and then I'm sure you'll stay around for food and drink, so whichever question we don't get. But I think there are at least 3 raised hands. Would you like Kevin to start because you're right?
Thank you. I'm John Broad, CEO of a software company called Stromsys. So I want to thank you all for being so generous with your personal stories. So I'd like to ask, what was your biggest mistake in your career, or the biggest that comes to mind, and what was the lesson for all of us?
That I didn't start my own company sooner. It's just like the culture that I mentioned about earlier. The next company start one day. The first thing I'm going to do is write down the culture, even if it's just me. And it will change. But that's an important lesson I learned, just not the biggest. The biggest has been, if I could go back, I could have gained a few more years. So the culture is one, but the biggest mistake I would say is not starting sooner a company. Even though I did learn a lot at a public company, it's a great life being an entrepreneur. And it's all about the journey, not the end, you know. Anyone else?
I think in my case is, I think staying within your comfort zone. For example, I spent my earlier part in telecommunications, and I thought that that was the space. And I would see big companies, but when you talk to other people in the industry, they say, "Oh, telecoms have been around for 40 years. There isn't a lot to be done now. It's a much harder space." So I think that kind of flexibility, and I think in the US that's the case of shifting markets, shifting, mingling with people from entirely new industries and getting those crazy ideas early on that some people are working, but you consider them weird. Like, think about Bitcoin 2015 or 2014. Like those people looked like weird back then, but like jumping into those markets as a hobby, as a passion, I think that's the learning to me, that if you want to do something, you need to be jumping into things that look weird, you're not entirely comfortable, but you want to understand them and kind of join that journey. And I think that's the only way that you can get into exciting new things that are happening.
Yeah, this took me a little bit longer to think about it. That's why I was I was hesitant before. But this ties up very well with the previous question actually about the challenges. So the biggest challenge that I had was that I didn't know how to build the business, right? So I had to learn very meticulously in order to understand what the heck is going on in the business side. I was very much into technology, so I had to shift completely, right, in order to build this. And I told you earlier that my superpower is learning. So this gave me the luxury to strategize very early on so that I avoid big mistakes. And then, of course, there were mistakes, but they were part of this lean process when building the startup where you iterate multiple times. So I cannot say that there were mistakes. You see what I mean? Like there was tons of experimentation with calculated risks because of the way that I learned how to apply the business stuff that I learned in the books and from mentors. So tons of mistakes, but part of the process. So I can pick one and tell you that was a mistake that I regret. I regret nothing. It was part of an iterative process that kept us improving.
I don't know if it's considered a mistake that I should have done something, I should have, for example, I'm saying, I think it's what Nikos said about getting out of your comfort zone. I'm thinking all the time that, the timing of my decisions, like mostly I think that is, if it's a mistake, then maybe I would have done something sooner. That's what I'm thinking. But at the same time, it's not actually a mistake because I stayed and I learned something, but if it, like I would have changed I would have getting out of my comfort zone sooner. Maybe that was my mistake.
Excellent. All right, so I think we have two other questions. Yeah.
I have a question, a little bit different one. Everyone on this panel is kind of basically the entrepreneurs pitching kind of technology, right? But you are the only ones. Sorry, so everyone on this panel. My question. Better? Yeah, better. Okay, my question is specifically to 𝗏𝗏ance. Did I get your name right?
Yeah.
Okay, so my question is specifically to you. And it's really about, everyone on this panel is basically on the tech side, doing companies and pitching to the buyer. You're the only one on the panel that is on technically the buyer side, right? So I guess I'm a marketer and I really want to know, what are the pitfalls companies like 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, Metrika, and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 AI should avoid when speaking to the enterprise customer? What's your pet peeve as a buyer?
That's a good question, actually. I need to think about it. No, I will, not from the top of my mind, I would think that either, like what we just said about generalization and specialization. So I think Amazon is like unique because we build everything in-house, to be honest, and this is, the culture that you mentioned about it. But for all the other companies, for like when I was in Liberty, that we deal with like startups and like different type of businesses, I think the most important thing is what communication and like, what exactly we can communicate, first of all, correctly in order to be able to use your product, let's just say. And the second thing that I will add to that is more about if I can do, if I can do one thing good with your product, but if I can also add like another service. Like I think at Liberty, for example, we would prefer, let's just say, companies that they wouldn't have a variety of services, but they would have one specific service that would add something to the business. So it's more, it's like, it depends what you're trying to achieve.
Thank you. All right, we had one, two. So let's go. I don't want to battle. Okay.
Well, yeah, venue wise, we could.
Okay, you're good? All right. We'll walk through.
I know very well what Metrika and what the AI are doing, and it's kind of hard to avoid Amazon these days. So I'm just going to focus on Carlos today, who basically, essentially, in this presentation, told us that he found the silver bullet in databases.
Hard to believe, I guess, huh?
Yeah. And he did that starting in an open source manner. I'm a minor user of 𝗙𝗶𝗶 at the lab. We have somewhere, it's doing something in our website. I don't remember exactly what.
We're getting for basic.
Yes.
Very nice.
So, what makes you think that you are not going to be the next Mongo? After the SQL databases, we had a lot of other databases, and now we came up with a nice story about the multidimensional arrays, but it's a hard story, as you know. And I mean, I looked at your website. Obviously, you're having a much more detailed presentation there, but there are tons of challenges. So, what do you think those are, and what is your target moving forward on development? And what was the use that surprised you the most of your technology?
Yeah, the second is interesting for sure. Let me speak to the first. Please trust me that I was even more skeptical than you when I was building this company. So, and when I was pitching it, even to our team members, right? Because I had to convince the 40 people that comprise our team for this before I do the same for the customers. So it was as challenging as it sounds, okay, to convince people that this is the way to go. But here was the strategy. So first of all, in terms of Mongo and all NoSQL, Mongo was kind of inevitable for the following reason. People since the 70s were using tables, which was, again, the right thing to do, hands down. And then slowly, the diversity of the data increased. From tables, we started having library. We didn't have library before. Genomics is the same. Genomics is recent, right? And the satellite imaging, for example, today we have SAR. SAR is special imaging from the satellites that see through the clouds. And we didn't have that stuff before. So when this kind of data came up, the practitioners could not store them anywhere. There were no tables to store this kind of data. So it was kind of inevitable to come up with something super flexible, we call it NoSQL, to fit this kind of use cases. And we did, lacking one thing, performance. Because this flexibility came at the cost of performance. So you can get by for, I don't know, a couple of gigabytes or a couple of tens of gigabytes for certain cases, but we're dealing with petabytes. When you reach that stage, you may say, yeah, I can still use Mongo. Sure, I'll go check the Amazon bill when using those sharded instances of Mongo. So anyway, and again, it's a matter of cost, and it is a matter of how the scientists uses this data. The scientist uses arrays, like they use mathematical constructs, okay? They're not using NoSQL documents. So I'm not worried about that at all. What I was worried at the time was how am I going to pitch this audacious, like a completely insane idea, even to investors, right? Today I raised over $20 million, and that was not easy. So my strategy, and this is also a piece of advice also for aspiring entrepreneurs, is that I did start with a niche. So I did say, I dumped it down in the beginning. I was not, I mean, 𝗓𝗲 is our head of marketing, and she knows, she's there. But with 𝗓𝗲, we iterated on our messaging 1,000 times. We wouldn't dare call it universal in the early days. We're saying it's a multi-dimensional storage engine. And we went to the customers directly, direct sales, not too much marketing on purpose, because this did not resonate at the time. So we captured genomics very well. We have marquee customers with petabytes of data. We did the same for LiDAR, we're doing the same for time series, we're doing the same with weather. Inevitably, people will have to believe it, that we can capture all of those use cases without being Mongo, being better. So this is the that part. The use case that that surprised me. I'll tell you the use case that surprised me, not because I didn't think that we can handle it. I knew it, but I didn't think that it's going to come up that early. It was financial data. You know why? Because we never pitched to the financial market ever. But the financial market data is time series data. Very simple. It's one of our simplest use cases because the time is a dimension. We can slice it very fast. And we kept on getting, especially recently, we keep on getting inbounds from the financial hedge funds, for example. And this is surprising me because, you know, other people are saying, oh, you're very scientific, or you can't compete with Snowflake, you can't compete with Databricks. Well, those people are coming to us. And this is very surprising to me.
Okay, hi everyone. So last question is gonna be a little bit different. So my name is 𝗚𝗲𝗶 and I'm a professor of computer science. And so we develop classes all the time about data science, and the students, they are in line waiting for introduction to data science, which takes them through the pipeline: data storage, data cleaning, data integration, querying the data, SQL, stuff as we love that, predictive analytics and visualization. Which one of these phases of the pipeline you wish you saw candidates for the jobs that you are posting and say, okay, they should have known better, more than that. This is the most important, or, you know, where should they focus more? Where do you think these classes should focus more? What do you see lacking in the candidates that you see?
Very good question. Nikos, how's that?
Sure. First of all, Alex is sitting right there, so you can send them directly to go to Alex for the interviews. I think the issue that we see is that, first of all, we want to see people who are in a startup environment interested about what we're doing. It's not about having someone somewhere buried, waiting for context, taking a travel ticket and doing something. We want people who are interested in the problem. Like we have a take-home exam, they come back, they not only show us the quality of the code that they write to solve the problem or the pipeline that they were setting up, but they explain to us why they did it that way, why they were even curious to look at the data and what was there and challenge kind of the scope of work. So I think it's that curiosity that in a startup environment, you want someone who can become part of the team. And if tomorrow their role even slightly changes and from data pipelines, they have to do something else, they're curious enough and they know why they will be doing the other stuff. So I think that flexibility to us, alongside the solid technical skills, is what makes the difference.
For Amazon, I think it's pretty similar, like having like basically giving you like a problem or data and like how you're going to get into the solution, something like that. So because we think that if you have like some basic understanding, you know where to look, because of course you're not going to know everything. So you know where to look, but you will have some basic technical skill set or even like soft skill set that will lead you into the conclusion.
the things that we're asking.
Yeah, I agree. I'm on the business side, not the technical side, but I can tell you that we give some pose a problem as well during interviews. And we try to understand how they think, because my studies are very fine, where it's not about the solution necessarily, it's how they got there, right? And are they curious enough? Are they, is there an art to it as well? Of course, the skill is very important, but can they go outside and a little bit of what they learned during those courses?
Yeah, all that, this resonates very well with me. I mean, coming from academia, right? And it's a difficult problem, you know, because in your position, you can't buy, you can't do anything other than generalizing. Like, it's impossible. What are you going to do? Like data science in I don't know, GIS. This is just a fraction, right? It's going to be it's going to be a very good example, but it's just a fraction. So you will do exactly what you're doing. You will do a little bit of storage. You will do a little bit of databases. Absolutely, SQL is not going anywhere. By the way, we integrate with SQL as well. I don't want this to be, I don't want this to be misunderstood. You need to do SQL, but then you need to do the rest of the data science tools like Python, R, Julia, you know, even the up and coming stuff. It's inevitable. You're gonna capture most of the things that you can, and then the rest will be taught in the companies, and that's what we do as well for certain verticals.
I think we should wrap up. Thank you all. And the point of this is to network. So help yourself. There's lots of beer and wine and lots of food, and talk with our panelists and with each other.
And I would like to recognize two persons, 𝗡𝗶𝗸𝗶𝗸, which is the consulate intern, and �10𝗶𝗶𝗵𝗵, who came from Yale. He's also the Hellenic Innovation Network intern, and 𝗓𝗏.
I think we have another couple of moments. But definitely you are the minority.
Great job. Really great job.